Welcome to another exciting and inviting, informative and performative episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, the place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. I'm your host, life strategist and retirement planner, Randolph Love III. And if you have not heard, the third's the word. We have another great business owner on the podcast today. But before we bring them up, I do want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Shield Wolf Strongholds, a wealth growth and protection company when it comes to retirement planning, when it comes to life insurance, when it comes to employment benefits, when it comes to estate planning. If your plan ain't Shield Wolf, your plan ain't strong. If you are a business owner that wants you and your employees to retire higher than you would have prior, make sure you visit shieldwolfstrong.com or call or text +1 904 822 4262. Now to our guests. Mr. Tober's professional career spans over 3 decades and includes as a senior partner for over 10 years at the New York law firm of Boesch, Schiller, and Flexner. I hope I pronounced that right. LLP, managing partner and chairman of the corporate taxation and securities groups of one of the largest Florida regional law firms, and accountant and consultant with the global accounting and consulting firm, and IT consultant and developer with a national software firm, and a founder and CEO of several, not one, not two, but several technology companies. Mr. Tober's disciplines enables him to solve all aspects of his clients' issues. His current law practice includes transactional counsel on various business transactions, including strategic planning, entity design and formation, financings, and M&A advisor to CEOs and boards of small to mid-sized corporations, private equity firms, hedge funds, startups, and family boards, family offices, and design and implementation of corporate governance, accounting reviews, and investigations. Mr. Tober has a broad background in many industries, including automotive, banking, biomedical, distribution, durable goods, manufacturing, e-commerce, entrepreneurial startups, family offices, finance, healthcare, hedge funds, high-tech insurance, investment banking, motorsports, pharmaceuticals, private clients, and private equity. I started salivating at all of the stuff that he does. Thank you so much, John. Welcome to the Entreprenudist Podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. I feel like there should be more than one person on my side after hearing that.
Seriously. Oh yeah, you don't play the radio, seems like, man. Over 3 decades, and you seem like you spread the wealth and the knowledge around multiple industries.
Yes. Yeah, I've had a lot of various clients in various sectors over my career. And what that does is just gives you a view of where those sectors work and how those clients operate. It allows you to compare it to other similar clients. So if I get into a sector, I typically will have represented at one time more than one particular client in that sector. It's just you begin to develop a lot of expertise, and a lot of it has to do with just being a critical thinker. And is a person that knows how to solve problems and get it done, and that's the way it works. And but working in all different sectors is exciting. It's fun. You know, I could be in with a healthcare company, and 6 months later selling a mining company. And that actually has happened. So anyways, and it's, you know, you may learn new industries, all right, but just basically taking your background, in my background in law and accounting and tech, pretty much qualified to solve a lot of different problems. And there's a few gray hairs on this head, which means I've been doing it a while, and that's why I have such a varied exposure.
I mean, at least you have hair on your head, right? God told me no a long time ago, right?
Well, it gets a little thinner at time. Some clients cause you to lose hair faster than others.
I can imagine, man, because you don't just have expertise in all these fields. People actually call you to sit on their boards.
That's correct. It's an interesting side effect of having a lot of experience and solving a lot of problems. But there's always a beginning to that, to getting on boards. You just don't jump on a big board, all right? I mean, I've sat on a board of one of the largest retailers in the country and one of the largest healthcare companies in the country, which I serve on now. I serve on a board of a tech company in the UK, all right? But there's always a beginning, and you just don't. It's not an easy search or easy to get on a board. It requires a lot of expertise. It usually someone who's experienced at problem solving, and usually experienced in the business of the board that you're intending to serve on. But there's always a starting point. A lot of people ask me, how do I get on a board? All right. A lot of young people ask me that. First question is, well, you need to start somewhere, and you're not going to start on a Fortune 500 board. So my big advice is get on a charitable board. All right. Go to work for a charity. Go to work for a Big Brothers. Go to work for the Heart Association. Go to work for, some charitable organization that has a board, and raise some capital. And what you learn there is how a board runs. All right. And you'll meet other people on that board from different backgrounds. And that's a beginning in networking. And networking is very important in trying to pursue a board position. But and there are other aspects of how to do that. You got to be someone who's out there. You got to be someone that networks. You got to be someone that meets a lot of people in a lot of sectors, or a particular sector that you're interested in, because they're looking for people with experience. Okay, who can add value to their company when you're on a board. You're not there just to make decisions. You're there to make decisions that add value, and come up with ideas, and be creative. And that's what boards look for. So the fact that I sit on some large boards of large companies now is because of the decades of experience that I have in helping companies, working with boards, not as a board member, but as their advisor, working with CEOs as an advisor, helping them through problems, how to solve problems, which is what board members need to do. So it's not a glamour job on any board. It's a lot of work sitting on a board. It's a lot of work. I'd say if you don't like to read a lot, don't get on a board. Okay. You've got to stay up to date on what's happening in your sector. You've got to understand financial statements. You need to understand where the liabilities are. You should understand how to add value. There's a lot of pieces to being on a board. And people, and again, it's a difficult question. It's a long road to your first significant board. And a lot of it has to do with who you know, who you work with, who you're for what you do, how much of an expert are you at what you do, and does someone value your expertise? And so, yeah, there are different places to get yourself out there. There are a lot of trade associations, things like a bar association if you're a lawyer, accounting associations if you're an accountant. All right. Financial associations for financial advisors, all right, associations for people who are in investment banking, associations for people who are in the construction industry, different sectors, all right, to get involved with, so people know that you have a great deal of expertise in that particular sector, and that you can help other companies, and that's usually a way to start. Is building by putting those building blocks together, and eventually, if you get a board position, typically leads to another, because board members spread the wealth. People see that if you've done a good job and it's a company that has grown, a lot of people interested in the board members on that company. So yeah, that's kind of like how you start. Today it's shifted though. It used to be a good old boy gig to get on a board, but everyone wants someone on their boards that help build value. A lot of these boards are populated by private equity firms, hedge funds, other types of investment vehicles, family offices, and there are a lot of entities, companies that build databases of people who want to be on boards. They look for people that have really good credentials, and then people search those databases looking for someone to meet their needs. And some people get offered board positions. I've gotten offered board positions that I've declined because I didn't like the risk return characteristics of that company. Didn't like where it was going. Didn't like some of the litigation they might have been involved in, and the risks that go with being a board member. And people sometimes aren't aware of that. They'll take a board position and not be aware of the risks of being on a board, because you have responsibilities to investors and sometimes to the public. And so that's something when you evaluate a board position, you should take a look at. A good candidate for a board position is going to look at those risk return characteristics. They're going to make sure that the company that it go work for has enough net worth to indemnify them, okay? And that means basically if there's a lawsuit, if there's some litigation in the company, that director will not be responsible for any costs. And in addition to indemnification, looking for what's called directors and officers insurance, and making sure that there's good policy in place that protects the board. And in that case, you may look for an expert to read those policies for you if you don't know how to read them. Make sure that those are good ones. I found on occasion where I've had a little bit of a question mark about some of those policies and required, if you want me on the board, you're going to have to get me a policy, okay, for me alone. And that's happened. So it's a very interesting, it's a great job. It's very rewarding. It's economically rewarding. Members of boards of directors get fees. Fees can come in the form of a cash payment, or sometimes there are stock options and stock awards and bonuses if you sell the company. There are different ways that board members get compensated. But yeah, it's a worthwhile endeavor, but it takes planning if you want to get there.
Absolutely, and the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So I heard you say it's best to, if you've never been on the board, go ahead and start with a nonprofit. And it's over the past 2 months, I've had you included at least 3 people of high repute that said that don't look past the nonprofit boards. And so, do you just join any nonprofit board, or is there a criteria? If your ultimate goal is to get on a very reputable for-profit board, do you just join any nonprofit board, or is there a threshold that you need to pay attention to?
The threshold is, where's your heart when you look for a nonprofit board? What board do you want to be on? Because you're going to share that vision and that desire to help somebody on that board. You'll all have a common goal. All right. My first nonprofit board was a Big Brothers Big Sisters board. All right, because I wanted to help kids who were at risk. All right. I started a career way back when. And I was one of the guys who was developing subsidized housing, rental and purchases all around the country for different housing authorities. And I saw where people were living, and people weren't getting a chance, and where the kids looked like. And I would see where we were developing it. And I helped develop all the housing in Puerto Rico, and you go into the communities, and you kind of grow a bit as to what do I want to get involved in nonprofit, and being in Miami where I started, I said, I can do, let's help kids at risk. And so I have friends that were on boards for helping the American Heart Association. All right. Or the Boys and Girls Club, or other boards that have specific charities, the cancer related, there's a number of types of boards and charities you can get involved in, but your heart should be in it if you get in a nonprofit, because people will know that, and you'll have a common interest with the other board members, and that develops relationships that you need and will want, because other people on your board will be substantial people like you. All right. They will be people in the business community who can raise money like you, and so that's a really great starting place. And stay with a board, move up on that board. I was on that board, involved for almost 10 years, and I started off as a board member, a member of a committee, then then running the finance committee, and eventually became chairman of the board. And doing that progression I did it because I wanted to help kids. All right. But the indirect benefit is people that you've built relationships with through working with the nonprofits now want you on their boards. They see how you work. They see who your heart is. They see that you're the type of person that they want on your board. And you'll be sitting next to other professionals of all kinds of different professions. All right. So I could look to the left of me and see the CFO of the largest construction company in Florida. And on the other side, is the president of the Miami Heat. Okay. And across from me is the president of a huge cruise line. All right. So, those are ways you build that network. All right. But your heart's got to be in a nonprofit. Got to be in it. And that's a great way to start. And you meet really great people.
So find a board that your heart is in what their mission is, because not only do you get to fulfill your mission, but you also meet like-minded people who are successful, who can also see your work ethic and then parlay you to that board that gives you those fees that you mentioned. Now, one thing that I heard you mention about being a good member of the nonprofit board is raising capital. Is that easy? Is because you are a board, let's say you're someone who's never raised capital, is because you're now a member of that board that they typically give you a list and you just make a phone call and really and truly it's just, hey, this is such and such with this board, here's the money? Or are you actively having to learn a new skill set?
For many people, it's a new skill set. All right. And what you're going to learn is go to other people that you have relationships with and say, can you support my cause? All right. We need to raise money. Typically, you give each board member in a nonprofit, some nonprofits do, a target. Okay, if you want to be on this board, you got to raise $1,000 a year. You got to raise $10,000 a year. All right. Sometimes it's the give or get. Okay, and when you're starting out, it's the get because a lot of times when you're starting out a nonprofit, you're not writing a big check. All right, you're a young guy, young professional. All right. Sometimes, if you're a professional or just have a job in your company, you get the first supporter when you get to that board is your company. Okay, you go back to your company and say, "I'm on this board, this nonprofit. Will you be my first supporter?" Every company will do that. All right, at some level, they will do that, and that's how you start. All right, so you play golf or you go running. All right. Or you have buddies you share tickets with, or you have some guys you meet for dinner once a week or once a month. And you say, hey guys, I'm on this board. Why don't you see if you can support me? Anything helps. Help me bring it in. All right. And that's how it starts. And some people get really good at it. Some aren't. But that's how it starts. And it's a great skill to learn to how to do that. It's a great skill.
Oh yeah, a great skill to raise money. I think most people would love that skill, nonprofit or not. So how often do these nonprofit boards typically meet?
Usually monthly. And so, usually it's a monthly meeting, most nonprofit boards. And usually what goes along with nonprofits and raising funds are events. So the board breaks out in committees. They may have concerts or do something with the sports team or create a golf tournament or a tennis tournament or, go out and celebrate a 4th of July celebration with a school, okay, or whatever. They'll generate events, and those are usually fundraising events, all right, and spread your network. You meet more people, and then the faces change on boards, all right. Sometimes board members ask you to come on another board. Hey, can you join me on this other board? So that's a start. And guess what? And your clients, if you're a person that needs to generate clients, they like seeing in your description of your background that you're involved in nonprofits. That's a positive. It says something about someone's character. Okay. And clients like that when they see that. And a lot of clients, sometimes you'll have the same feelings towards that nonprofit, and they get involved. So I've had many clients jump into and be contributors to the nonprofits that I work for. So it grows. It grows. It's a good start. It's a really good start for someone who wants to get there, who wants to create a path to do corporate governance and board work in addition to their career.
Oh yeah, it's a good start, literally and metaphorically, right? So you've had this good start. You've chosen a nonprofit that match your passion, something that you're truly passionate and interested in. You came in, you met monthly, you raised capital, you utilized your network, you actively pursue the targets that you were given. Now you've been offered a role on a corporate board. What does that typically look like? Or what does an average board meeting look like on a corporation with a corporation?
Let's say you get on a corporate board, and we're talking about one that not a small company that's family owned or a small company that might have a couple $1 million of revenue. You typically don't see boards formed for companies that have under $10 million of revenue. You typically don't. They're usually small businesses. But when you get on a board like that, you have a responsibility to stay informed. Okay, you could have monthly or quarterly meetings. All right, you may be on a committee. For that board, you may be on a committee that sets compensation for all the officers and directors. You may be on a committee that deals with compliance. You may be on a committee, an audit committee that deals with the accountants. All right, there are various committees, and so different members of the board could have different responsibilities. You could be provided materials all the time that deal with issues. You need to read those materials. The materials every board member needs to be able to understand and read are the company's financial statements. All right. And so that is a must for every board member. And as you go into a board meeting, you got to be prepared to ask questions if you don't understand something. If you see something that's happening either operationally or financially, that's being reported to you in a summary before the board meeting, you need to be an inquisitive person. All right. And not be afraid to ask questions, hard questions. All right. And that's what the company looks for. That's what the equity holders, the owners of that company are looking for. The board's there to protect the investors. All right. And the shareholders. And so they're expecting the board to hold management's feet to the fire. All right. But also develop a relationship with management, a working relationship. And so Yeah, it can be a very good thing. I've had members of a senior leadership team in a company that left the company on which I was on a board, later suggested that I be a member of a board of the company they went to. Okay. Okay. All right. So that can happen. And so, yeah, so it's a different environment than a nonprofit. All right. You're there to increase shareholder wealth. All right. And you're there to manage. The board of directors manages management. All right. And the board of directors typically, hopefully, are all critical thinkers and are part of the problem solving and part of developing plans to create growth within a company and profitability. So yeah, it can be really exciting. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm on a healthcare board right now. It's an exciting time being on a healthcare board.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's coming out of of the current administration. Everyone in healthcare is on their toes, figuring out what to do next. And so it's an exciting time on a board like that. And so that, yeah, it's a job, not a full-time job, but it requires diligence, all right, and commitment as a board member. And it's a great experience. It's a great experience.
And because with the nonprofit, that individual effort, key performance indicator seems very measurable. Either you got people to contribute to the nonprofit or not. Either you showed up to the event or not. What's the individual key performance indicator in that corporate board? Because yes, it's your job to manage the managers, and yes, it's your job to increase the overall bottom line to the shareholders. Are you saying that once you make it to that corporate board, that is not individual key performance indicators, but group key performance indicators?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the shareholders typically they're the ones who select who goes on the board. Okay, the shareholders of any company, and they're going to look at each of the individual directors. They'll evaluate them every year, and a lot of the input that shareholders have come from management, all right, as to what the board's doing in the board meetings, because shareholders aren't there, all right. But shareholders need to add value, all right, and you add value a number of ways. Is one is getting more deeply involved with certain aspects of what management's trying to accomplish, all right, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. And two is always getting involved in the dialogue to make sure that management makes the right decision. All right. Okay. Is it time to buy another company? All right. Sitting down with the investment bankers or sitting down with the accountants, all right, and talking about whether we can take the risk and make this investment, because the board's going to make that decision. All right. So basically, the shareholders find out how involved is each board member. Is there someone sitting on the board that asks no questions? Someone in the board that is just a lump in a chair? All right. What's that person doing? So it comes down to, does that board member add value? Now, let me give you the example. Okay. A board member is in charge, and this is a real example, that makes the suggestion to the shareholders that compliance with federal regulations be put, the oversight on the audit committee of the board, not to general counsel. That's explaining that was a conflict of interest. At the time, the industry error rate in this healthcare company in filing Medicare claims, the industry error rate was 24%. Okay, that means you lose 24% of what you could have collected from your claims. All right. Once it came into that audit committee, and the head of that audit committee, all right, personally took over oversight, personally expanded the compliance department from 4 to 20, all right, and in 36 months reduced the error rate to 0.
Wow.
Right. Now, did that add value? It added tens of millions of dollars of value. All right. So that's an example. And there are other things that board members do that add value. All right. A lot of times a board member with experience in buying or selling companies, all right, will get involved with the buying or selling of a subsidiary or buying of a company and adding it to it, and will get involved in the negotiations and the valuation because they have so much experience at it, all right, and get a company a higher value. Okay, so yes, the board members can have major impact, individual board members, on the value of a company. And adding value is a criteria that the shareholders look at when they decide to keep a board member, reward a board member, or to get a new board member when they see a non-performer.
Oh yeah, and it is a very prestigious position, and it's funny that you say, don't just be somewhere there just sitting, not asking questions. When typically when you see a board on a TV show or on a movie, you got like 12 people just not saying nothing, right? Yeah. Whereas I imagine that's not necessarily the case in real life, and just like you just said, it's not necessarily making statements. I imagine pontificating. I don't even know if I'm using the right word, but it's about asking those great questions that get those other board members thinking.
Correct. And board members need to learn how to develop relationships with their senior leadership teams, with the CEO and the CFO and the head of human resources and your chief operation. You need to develop those relationships. They should never be contentious, all right? But they should be a very good working relationships where there's trust, right? Mm-hmm. Some board members aren't good at forming those relationships, but that's very important, all right? That those relationships get formed. But again, and management always needs to understand that, there's those saying that the buck stops here when it comes to the CEO and what's underneath the CEO, but ultimately the buck stops at the board, all right? Because the board is the enabler. But the relationships it's important. You need to be good at developing relationships. You can't be a loner on a board, all right? And you need to develop relationships with the other board members, all right? You don't need contentious. There are always board members with different views who will discuss different outcomes, and in the end, the board will pick a path to take, all right? But there can't be any animus on a board. There should never be any animus.
Oh yeah, and it's the equivalent of time. When I think about a board, it's the equivalent of value add versus time add. And I know one of the benefits of that when people think about they want to be on the board, because you're either meeting once a month or once a quarter. But as you said, you're reading things in between. What is starting out? Or is this the way to look at it? Starting out, you just made the transition from nonprofit to corporation. What does that compensation typically look like? Because once again, it's not about the time; it's about the value. What do these companies typically value board members when it comes to compensation?
It depends on the company. It depends on the size of the company. All right. Mm-hmm. If you look at the lowest entry level on a board at a very, very small company, they're not getting really big fees. All right. They could be paid anywhere from $20,000 a year, maybe to $50,000 a year. That would be in the smaller companies. Once you start getting up into companies that are pushing revenues of maybe $400 or $500 million a year, you're getting into a six-figure number, all right? And sometimes board members will receive stock options, all right? Sometimes they'll receive restricted stock, RSUs, restricted stock units. Sometimes they'll get an exit bonus. When the company's sold, they get a bonus, all right? But the compensation varies, all right? So as a new board member, all right, and you want to take that path, not only on your first board, but you want a second board, you want a third board later. Don't be all hung up over the compensation. Be more hung up is that you're protected from liabilities wherever you are. that the company has wherewithal to indemnify you for any costs, if there are any lawsuits, any investor lawsuits, and that the company has a good director and officers insurance policy to protect you. That's more important in the beginning than how much you're making. All right. And so you need to be real careful about that. So that's what I say. So, it's a scale that kind of goes up as with the size of the company. All right. It also goes up with the profitability of the company. All right. Depends how profitable a company is. But you got to start somewhere. And typically you start at a smaller board for a smaller company. All right. I mean, you're not going to jump onto a first time out on a Fortune 500 board. That would be unusual. That would be very unusual for that to happen, and highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So
okay.
it's a nice benefit, and over time, as you progress to more complex boards, it goes up.
Because that is, I guess that's the last point I want to touch on. Because what you're saying makes sense. Don't necessarily think about what you're getting paid, but think about if you're being covered for potential liability. So what's the minimum threshold of insurance type of insurance policy that somebody should be looking for? Because I heard you mention, I forget exactly what term that you used.
D&O policy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A directors and officer policy. What you do is when you acquire a D&O policy, the company, and typically there's usually sometimes someone on the board who has experience, if there's no experience within the company, but usually it's the CFO, all right? Or a general counsel, if there's one. Or if there's no general counsel, outside counsel helps. But typically what happens is the underwriters who underwrite the D&O policy will help you determine what that amount is you need, okay? What are your sales? What are your profitability? How much capital have you raised? How much investment have your investors invested in this company? All right. And they'll usually come out with an amount. You're talking, I've sat on boards that have had smaller boards that have had $2 to $5 million policies. And believe it or not, it's not as expensive as you think it is. It's not. All right. But I've sat on boards that's had $60 or $70 million of D&O insurance. Okay. So it depends on the size of the company, its profitability, and the characteristics. And because the underwriters who underwrite the D&O policy will not typically, they don't want you underinsured, but they will not super overinsure you, okay, when they don't have to. So that becomes, that's how it gets determined. That's how it gets determined. But it's not uncommon for small companies to at least have a couple $1 million of D&O. For smaller companies, not uncommon.
Okay.
Provided you have investors. Okay. Usually, provided you have investors.
Okay, so you're saying if you have investors, make sure you have D&O. But if you don't have investors, it's you got to look and see where the liabilities are. Okay, you got to look. Are there any regulatory liabilities? Okay. Is it someone who seeks reimbursements from the federal government on some type of program? All right. Are you providing products that could have product liability claims? Board can get sued. Okay. You may want D&O. All right. But if you've got investors, you definitely want D&O. Okay. Oh, and I guess this is going to be my last question, and before we move into getting you up out of here. So D&O for nonprofit board seats as well?
Yes, and that's a really good point to put up. Nonprofits should definitely have directors and officers insurance. There are specific D&O policies for nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. And it covers the board as a group, or each board member as an individual?
Each individual is covered, and that's a question you should always ask. And I'm glad you brought that up. Because nonprofits should have D&O, okay, especially if it's a nonprofit that the people benefiting from that nonprofit are children.
Got you.
Yeah.
What books should people be reading?
Pardon?
What books should people be reading?
Oh, gee, what books? I haven't thought about a question for that. I don't have any.
And it don't even have to necessarily be on the subject of boards, but just anything when it comes to personal development, professional development, or boards. But just what books should people be reading?
There are books out that deal with how to develop a network. Okay, books about networking, books about professional development. All right. There are some books out there that will speak about how to be a member of a board of directors. All right. And there's some interesting stuff. You can Google it all and come up with a lot of different resources. All right. A lot of it will probably refer to a lot of the topics that we discussed. All right. But that's what I would look for. That's what I would look for if people want to read up on it. If they want to.
So look for books on networking. Even if it's not specifically about a board, look for books on networking.
Networking, there's a book that I know that someone wrote that it's called "Business is a Contact Sport."
Okay, I heard of that one.
All right, yeah, and he was a banker in Miami who I know. His name was Russ Vitaretta. He wrote that book, and good book. It was a good book. But those type of books, build your network. Okay, build your relationships. All right. There's plenty online about how to be a good board member. All right. But you got to get there first. All right.
Yes.
You got to get there first.
And what is your personal definition of success?
As a board member?
Your personal definition of success. You can see it as a board but what's your personal definition of success?
Being happy and fulfilled at what you're doing. All right.
Oh, that's
good. If you're not happy and fulfilled at what you're doing, do something else.
That's a good response.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
And the last question.
Oh,
is there not a question that I did not ask you that I should have?
That's interesting. I think you're a very inquisitive person, so you do ask a lot of really relevant questions. So that leaves me tough. But as a board member, is a question you would ask is what happens when you're a board member and everything goes south?
What happens when everything goes south?
Okay. First of all, is don't lose your head. All right, and it happens. All right, as hopefully you made the right decision in this D&O policies. All right, and first thing is the insurer will pick counsel to represent the board members, and you need to look around and make sure you don't have any conflicts with other board members. All right, and if you do, then you should push the issue of having separate counsel for each board member, or at least you, the individual board member who has a concern. It happens sometimes that individual board members and a board member have different issues. All right. If a board member's on the finance committee, if a board member's on the audit committee, if a board member's on a special committee, all right, you may all have different risk return characteristics, and one counsel may not be good. So when it goes south, all right, it's always good as a board member to at least know an attorney could advise you on how to deal with the D&O insurance and counsels that they represent. Many times the D&O insurer will compensate, will pay the expenses of a board member who wants to hire their own attorney. All right. So the question is, don't panic. You don't panic, and what you do is you take a very metered approach to, do I need my own lawyer? If you know a lawyer, it's always good to have someone to advise you on how to move forward in that situation. Because most board members, the first time there's an action against a board of directors, have no idea what to do. Okay. And in my case, I come from the legal side. I knew exactly what to do. Right. So usually they all come to me and say, what do we do? Okay. So, okay. And it'll happen. And it will happen. And many times those types of actions go away. They're settled. They fizzle out. But you gotta remember, being on the board member is being on a board of directors always has some element of risk. All right. And most times it does not come to fruition. But if it does, you don't panic.
You are a wealth of knowledge, John. One last time, let everybody know who you are, what do you do, and how they can get in touch.
Okay. I am John Tober, as I have been introduced. I'm a corporate and a transactional lawyer. I'm also an accountant with a very heavy tech background. I help people buy and sell their companies. I help companies reorganize and fix them. Some of the companies I work with are smaller companies now. Some are large. But when people have questions about what do I do next, a CEO, it's a family-owned business. What do I do next? How do I sell my company? How do I fix this? I'm in a jam. How do I get financing? All right. I'm dealing with a regulator. How do I deal with a regulator? I help people like that out all the time. I help people like that. And so those are the things that I'll get involved in. There's no sector I pretty much haven't been in. Even sports teams.
Man. Next time we talk, I want to cover that. And how can they get in touch with you if they maybe want you on their board?
Well, you can always contact me at john.tober@gmail.com. And you may ask, why do I use a Gmail? It's because every company I serve on a board wants me to have an email, and I don't want to have 8 emails. Okay, so I use that one. And you can reach my phone number, which is 203-414-3330. Text me or just give me a call. Sure.
I truly appreciate your time, energy, and effort, John. And this has been another informative episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, the place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. I am your host, life strategist and retirement planner, Randolph Love III. And until next time, remember, don't play with it, stay with it until you make pay with it. This is the Entreprenudist Podcast, signing off.